What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires, or as I sometimes like to joke here at the channel, Spider-Man Always. We managed to do just 2 No Way Home videos in the last 20. Now here we are doing 2 in the last 3, but hey, sometimes it do be like that, and we got some major updates. The first of which coming from a trusted industry insider we've covered often here at the channel over the last 2 years with an absolutely impeccable trailer release date record. He gave us an update about the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. Some of you are going to be disappointed to hear this. We also have the most in-depth plot leak, everybody's favorite anonymous 4chan plot leak. We have the text for you. We'll issue you the normal spoiler warning. We'll read through it word for word. I'll annotate it and contextualize it where I can, as always, break it down, weigh in on whether or not I think it's real. We'll also first, though, dive right into this update from the industry insider about the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer release. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button, we're still giving away a PlayStation 5 as well as Disney Plus subscriptions every week while the shows are live, and we're also going to announce some brand new MCU related giveaways when What If goes live in a couple of weeks. If you want to be entered to win, all you have to do, hit the subscribe button, then make sure to leave a comment down below, and if you want, stick around to the end of the video. We'll get into all the giveaway stuff again there. So first up, the trailer release update, this coming from Daniel RPK, Daniel Rickman, a trusted industry insider we've covered for a couple of years here at the channel, and has an absolutely batting 1,000 track record when it comes to releasing trailer dates. He's literally nailed them all, never been wrong. Unfortunately, his update was the opposite of announcing the release of the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. He said it would not be coming this next week. So if you're one of those people who's literally waking up every day in anticipation of the trailer, go ahead and rule the next week out on your calendar. Generally, they don't release trailers on weekends either. That takes us all the way up till August 2nd, which should give some of you trailer fiends almost a full 10 days of not having to spam the refresh button on the Sony Pictures Entertainment YouTube channel. Now, as it pertains to this plot leak, or really any plot leak, anonymous or not, when we cover them here at the channel, the normal spoiler warning: remember to take anything that doesn't come directly from Marvel Studios with a grain of salt. But in the past and real recently, it's these anonymous 4chan plot leaks, when real, that are 100% correct. And we saw this with the Disney Plus series Wandavision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We were getting full descriptions of episodes weeks in advance, and again, it's always the anonymous 4chan plot leaks. So while most of them are fake, when they are real, they're right on the money. That being said, if this ends up being the one, if this is somehow going to ruin your Spider-Man No Way Home, your Spider-Man 3 experience, the future of Marvel Phase 4, only you know if you're susceptible to this kind of thing. We ain't gonna be mad at you, but you might want to back out now. Otherwise, we've got the text. We're going to overlay it for you here, read through it word for word, and I'm going to break it down and annotate it where I can. It starts with the precursor. I'm not going to tell you guys who I am or what kind of job I do at Marvel Studios, but I'm bringing this out because I am frustrated. While I've not seen the film, I have read the script, and it goes like this. Also, the trailer won't show Tobey or Andrew. It's full of fake scenes designed to throw you off. Act 1. The scene takes place in an abandoned warehouse somewhere in New York at night. A group of teenagers is exploring this abandoned building for a live stream. They talk about how the place is supposedly haunted. They eventually encounter a mysterious figure stumbling out of the darkness, clad in green armor, but injured. The teenagers are scared, but they attempt to mock the figure, but then they run as soon as the figure starts walking towards them. The figure is none other than Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, wearing his armor from the 2002 Spider-Man movie, but without the helmet. An extended version of the breaking news report from the ending of Far From Home plays over the Marvel Studios logo. Then we see a montage of screens broadcasting the same video we saw at the ending of Far From Home when Mysterio exposes Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and of course, J.K. Simmons' new version of John Jonah Jameson. Spider-Man is holding his head in panic, just as he was at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. He looks back at MJ and then back at the screen. We then see the reactions of various people. We see Flash Thompson drop a snack from his mouth as he's watching, surprised at the fact that Peter is Spider-Man. Ned is with his mother, just as shocked. Spider-Man swings away as people look at him, telling MJ to meet him back at Queens. Aunt May frantically calls him about what's happening. Spidey tells her that he'll be home soon and that they should probably move away as he fears there might be a mob that will attack their home. Spider-Man arrives at their apartment building in Queens and they talk about what to do, calling Happy. Obviously, Aunt May, Ned, and MJ know that Peter is innocent. They also attempt to contact Nick Fury, but he doesn't answer because he's in space. Then there's a joke about Nick ghosting Peter back for not answering his calls in Far From Home. Peter tells Aunt May that they may have time to figure things out since Peter Parker previously was just a normal teenager, so not many people may know where he lives, but just as suddenly a bunch of people are gathered outside yelling at him, including Brad Davis and a few other students from Pete's school who probably led the mob to his home. Happy attempts to pick Peter and May up from their apartment, but the people in front of the apartment building are getting in his way. Peter sees Happy outside the window, gestures for them to come down. Peter quickly changes into his civilian outfit, goes down with May, and confronts the mob, pretending not to know what the hell is happening. Brad Davis calls out to him that he should know what's happening since his face was just broadcast all over the world. Happy comes out of his car and escorts them to the car. In the car, they discuss what to do. Happy suggests hiring a lawyer so that they can settle this legally, as there's nothing really else they can do at this point. May says she may know someone. She pulls out her phone and starts contacting a lawyer. We cut to a courthouse. Peter is on trial. The lawyer is none other than Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox. The witness is one of Mysterio's accomplices. The court battle gets heated as the accomplice presents new evidence showing a more convincing footage of Peter killing Mysterio that was not shown to the public. It's a video doctored with high tech, so it looks like Peter shot Mysterio point blank. They also mentioned that the video has been examined for any sign of fakery. None was found. Matt attempts to speak back, but he's cut off by the judge and branded guilty. Matt tells Peter that he'll find a way to fix this because he knows Peter is innocent, but subtly implies that he knows he's also Spider-Man. This is the last we'll see of Matt Murdock. Peter is arrested. He tells Aunt May that he has no choice but to serve his sentence and assures her he will be fine. Ned and watch as police officers escort Peter out of the courtroom, past a court of people, into a police car. We see a shot of Peter looking out the window of the police car, past the crowd, yelling that Spider-Man is a murderer. Peter spends a day in prison, being bullied by the other inmates. He wouldn't fight back. In his cell, a tiny portal opens in front of him and a piece of paper comes out of it. It's a paper that reads, 177A, Bleecker Street, hurry. Peter escapes through a barred window by breaking the bars and crawling out. Ned and MJ are at May's house to accompany her so that she wouldn't be lonely. Peter comes in through the window. May, Ned, and MJ are surprised and happy to see Peter escaped, but also concerned that he would just ruin his reputation further. Peter tells him that Doctor Strange is calling for him and he'll be going there. He recognized the portal. Ned and MJ ask to go with him. He disagrees at first, but eventually agrees after being convinced they'll always face what's ahead together. They arrive at the Sanctum. They look around the place and then look up at Doctor Strange dramatically floating down the stairs. This is the picture where Tom, Zendaya, and Jacob are looking up. Strange explains that something dire is happening and that something far bigger than Peter's current issue. He leads them into a room with an orb in the middle with a vein-like trails all over the area. He explains that the flow of time has somehow been disturbed and that many realities are starting to bleed into each other. Obviously, those who watched Loki know what's happening. Strange tells Peter that the two timelines are merging into their own, but with the orb that he apparently dug up from somewhere has the ability to slow down the merging process. Also notes it's not quite like the Reality Stone. Spider-Man asks why he called him in particular, and not someone else, similar to how he asks Nick Fury why he chose him to deal with the elementals in the Far From Home scene. Strange says it's because he's the center of the problem that he's currently dealing with, a problem that's part of an even bigger problem. Doctor Strange explains he cannot leave the Sanctum. He has to keep the reality stable, and this is very difficult to do for now as all the Infinity Stones have been destroyed, so he has to rely on pure magic. He tells Peter that villains from various other realities that are just like theirs, ever so slightly different, have been transported into their reality. Their realities have all something in common: Spider-Man. Doctor Strange reveals that the villains are taken from various points of the timeline of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's movies. Dr. Octopus, played by Alfred Molina, is taken from the Sam Raimi universe while he is floating underwater during the ending of Spider-Man 2. Otto's consciousness is already dead, so he is replaced by AI of the Tentacles. Sandman is taken from before he has encountered the black suit Spider-Man at the sewers in Spider-Man 3. Electro is after the events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, as he has learned to control his powers to the point where he got his natural skin color back instead of being all blue all the time. He also wears a green and yellow outfit reminiscent of his classic suit. The Lizard is taken from the Oscorp Tower during the final fight of The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Scorpion and Vulture are from the MCU and have decided to team up with the various versions. They are all working under someone who, of course, is Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, but we do not know this yet, which is weird because he said at the beginning of this leak that we saw Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin stumble out of the alley. I'm also going to take a minute, while there is plenty of this plot leak to read through, another full 2 acts, to say that he seems to be mentioning a lot of details specifically that are taking up a large part of this plot leak that we've covered several times here at the channel over the last year or so, since Spider-Man really picked up a lot of steam back in last November. I'm just pointing that out now as we sort of cautiously wade through the rest of this. I'll wrap it up with my thoughts at the very end. To make sure that Peter is up for the task, Strange teleports Peter's Iron Spider suit to the Sanctum and combines it with magic, turning it into the Intergrated suit. He tells Peter that it'll allow him to use magic that will allow him to put the villains in stasis and put them in the Sanctum so Strange can bring them back to their respective universes and timelines. Peter actually ends up capturing all 5 of them and bringing them back to the Sanctum, but during the fight with Doc Ock, he is heavily injured. 3 of the villains are imprisoned in the Sanctum. Later on, a recovering Peter talks to Sandman and learns that back in his reality, his daughter Penny is sick and that he's the only one doing everything he can to save her. Peter recognizes the name and asks if her last name is Marco, to which Sandman says yes. Peter tells him that he knows a girl at school named Penny Marco who was happy and was a survivor of the sickness, and that his father, Flint, died during a bank robbery in an attempt to get money to save her. Sandman reveals that his name is also Flint and sheds a tear. Peter asks what he's like in Sandman's world. He tells him that he only fought him once inside an armored vehicle. Ned, MJ, Peter, and also May come to the Sanctum, spend the night there. Suddenly, they hear an explosion where the villains are imprisoned. Peter rushes back to where the villains are and found that most of them have escaped except for Sandman, who looks at him and says he's sorry before disappearing. Strange was caught off guard and injured by the explosion, and he says that an event has worsened reality's state. Strange warns Peter not to go after them while injured, but Peter tells them that he can't just sit by and let innocent people get hurt, and it's his responsibility. Spider-Man dons the Intergrated suit again. Strange gets an idea. Sandman is trying his best not to hurt him, but the rest of the villains are nearly killing him. Spider-Man ends up crashing into a rooftop completely battered more than he ever was before, where a figure clad in green and purple hoodie approaches him. He takes off his hood, revealing it to be Norman Osborn of the Sam Raimi universe. The scene is an homage to that scene in Spider-Man 1 where Goblin talks to Tobey's Spidey after dosing him with sleeping gas. Norman reveals that he was taken from the ending of Spider-Man 1 just seconds before he was about to be impaled by his own glider. Well, if he was just seconds before he was about to be impaled, then how would he know that he was going to be impaled? Unless the guy who's writing this was writing that knowing that we all know that scene, which is probably the case. At first, the scene is done with the archive footage of 2002's movie, but it blends with a new shot where Norman is suddenly teleported as his glider crashes into the wall. We also learned that Norman Osborn was actually sent into the past of the MCU, so he had time to actually murder the MCU's own Norman Osborn, preventing Oscorp from ever existing in the MCU. Instead of turning Oscorp into a big name, he instead waited for the right time to strike. At first, he thought the MCU didn't have a Spider-Man, but later found out about the existence because of the events of Homecoming and Far From Home. Norman prepares to kill him as he has learned his lesson not to let Spider-Man live so he wouldn't get away. But he was saved by none other than Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man wearing his The Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit. At this point, I'm going to refer to them by their actors' names to avoid confusion. Norman shouts at Andrew and attacks him back, but he gets thrown back. Andrew grabs Tom and takes him back to the Sanctum. Note that the script says something like QTSM fanfare, which I assume is them playing the main theme of either The Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2 as Andrew's own personal theme music. I wouldn't be surprised if we only hear it once in the scene though. Act 2. Back at the Sanctum, Ned, MJ, and May are surprised to see another Spider-Man carry Tom to them. There's a gag here where MJ admires how tall this version of Spider-Man is. Andrew unmasks himself and says that he came to help, noting that weird things have been happening back in his world as well. He was taken to the MCU a few months after the events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Doctor Strange says that he used a forgotten spell to be able to pull the inhabitants of other universes into the MCU. While the Breach can do this as well by random, this spell allows him to specifically choose who to bring over, hoping that the 2 Spider-Men are enough to fight the villains. Somewhere, the Sinister Six have formed in a base. They are not called the Sinister Six during the movie though. Sandman wants to go back to his universe, but the rest of the villains plan on killing the Spider-Man of this world instead of conquering it, saying that they no longer have any purpose back in their own worlds. They have already failed. Lizard notes that he hasn't failed already, but Norman tells him that he was destined to, but perhaps it could be different in this world. They plan on attacking the Sanctum themselves, kill Strange and Spider-Man, steal the orb, and attempt to bring back more versions of themselves into the MCU somehow. Vulture and Scorpion then join them, picking up directly after their interaction in Homecoming's post-credit scene. Since they're not magic users, Norman has the idea of using the technology of the MCU's Norman to control the orb's power. However, this is found out by Doctor Strange himself, who uses astral projection to infiltrate them. MJ and May talk with Andrew, asking him various questions. Ned and Tom stare at him from a distance. Ned said something like, "Dude, how is he you? You guys look nothing alike." Andrew approaches Tom and says he has a cool outfit and that he did well out there. Tom says that the suit was actually made by Tony Stark and that he's pretty sure he got his ass kicked. Tom asks Andrew if he knows a Tony Stark, but Andrew doesn't recognize the name. The two bond when they start talking about their differences and similarities. It's things like the fact that Andrew doesn't know a Ned, while Tom doesn't know a Harry. Tom quips that he's been to space, but Andrew says technically he beats going to space by literally going to another dimension, but then he does note that he's never been to space. Andrew says that MJ is a nice girl and that Tom is lucky to have her. Tom assumes that Andrew also has an MJ of his own, but he gets reminded of Gwen Stacy. Before Tom and Andrew could finish their conversation, Strange interrupts them and says that they need to prepare as the villains are coming to them. Strange says that he'll help in any way that he can, but he won't be able to give Spider-Man any more of his magic, but Tom assures him that they'll be fine, they just need to build new armored suits to better protect themselves. Happy is informed by Tom that they'll need the tech over at Strange's Sanctum. Meanwhile, Spider-Man's reputation is further damaged after his escape from prison and fight with the Sinister Six. Flash is now the one being bullied at school, this time for having supported Spider-Man. With Happy's help, Tom and Andrew build new suits for themselves. Tom gets a black and gold suit, while Andrew gets what's described as a high-tech suit that somewhat resembles the black and gold classic Iron Spider suit. The classic Iron Spider suit is actually red and gold, by the way, guys. While Andrew gets a high-tech suit, it is just Tom who's able to use magic. Tom and MJ share a moment together outside. MJ tells Tom about how she's worried they won't be able to be together for long because of the amount of danger that Tom always finds himself in. Man, that sounds familiar. Tom assures her that they'll be together as long as possible and that he'll never let anything happen to himself or her. They share a kiss. We cut to NYC at sunset. We see a young woman being mugged by a thug played by Holland. The thug is webbed up by Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. His suit closely resembles his classic suit from the Sam Raimi movies with raised webbings, but is described as looking more sleeker with smaller eyes. Tobey asks the woman if she's okay, but then takes a break, takes off his mask, and gets a call from Kirsten Dunst MJ through his cell phone. Cut to their living room where she's caring for their daughter named May Parker and tells her that they're almost out of pancake mix. They then start talking about Tobey's decision as retiring as Spider-Man, as the other heroes are now appearing in their world. It doesn't say who those heroes are, it's only revealed through Tobey's dialogue. It's not revealed in the script who they are either. Tobey arrives home, plays with his daughter, and then he has to talk about Mary Jane, about how he needs to be there more for his child. Tobey promises that he'll take it easy now. We also get to see a newspaper that seemingly implies that the events of the canceled Spider-Man 4 movie actually happened, or at least a version of it. We then move into Act 3. Norman Osborn approaches the entrance of the Sanctum at midnight. He knew that Strange was expecting him. His monologues about how this new world is a chance to have something for himself, a chance to get something bigger than what it was back in the Raimi movies. The rest of the Sinister Six start wrecking the Sanctum, but it's seemingly empty. However, Tom lands a dropkick on Electro's head after being in a dark spot above him. As the two Spider-Men fight the Sinister Six inside, we get to see various Strange-related Easter eggs from the comics as well as other Marvel lore. A rematch between Andrew and the Lizard happens, in which Andrew tells him he failed to turn everybody into reptiles and how he turned back into Kirk Connors. A copy of Strange does his part in the fighting, as well as ends up getting knocked unconscious due to being weakened from them trying to bind realities from breaking. The fight is a pretty big one and ends with the two Spider-Men injured, but they were able to subdue the Lizard, Scorpion, Vulture, and Doc Ock. Tom attempts to capture Norman, but he catches him off guard and stabs him with a blade through the shoulder. However, Sandman betrays Norman and attacks him. Sandman is then killed after Norman is detonated. What seems like being a pumpkin bomb filled with fluid. Turns out Norman has a contingency plan that he can kill all of the villains if they ever should betray him. Tom yells at Norman and attempts to attack him again, but Norman summons a new glider that he stole from an old project run by MCU's own Norman. While the two Spider-Men put up a good fight against him, they are ultimately overwhelmed by the glider's weapons, destroying their new suits. With the two Spider-Men down for the count, MJ strikes Norman in the head with a steel pipe, but it doesn't hurt him. Norman slowly turns his attention to MJ. Tom screams out to MJ to run, but Norman grabs her by the back of the neck and tosses her across the room, slamming her into a wall rather brutally. Tom screams, but is knocked down with one punch. Norman goes into the room where Strange's physical body is. The two have dialogue together. Norman says that Strange has spent too much time trying to maintain the reality and has been severely weakened. Norman attempts to go for the kill, but Strange lets go of the orb and fights Norman, but not before doing a brief spell on the orb that makes it glow red briefly. Norman is no match against Strange, but Electro then appears and takes the orb while Strange is distracted. Strange attempts to cast a portal in front of Electro as he attempts to escape, but Norman grabs Strange and throws him against a wall. Doctor Strange gets back up, but they've disappeared. Tom cradles MJ, who starts bleeding from the nose, mirroring the moment Andrew lost Gwen in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Andrew takes off his mask in shock. MJ dies. Ned and May try to console Tom, but Strange tells them that they've escaped with the orb, but he's brought one last backup, even though it isn't much. Andrew tells Tom about the time he lost Gwen Stacy. Tom tells him about the time he lost Tony Stark, his own version of Uncle Ben, and now MJ. They have a talk about how being Spider-Man will always lead to suffering, but that they must persevere. Andrew tells Tom about how much he always wishes he could have a second chance in saving Gwen's life, no matter which form. Tom considers quitting being Spider-Man and just living his life as a criminal in jail, but Andrew tells him that he's in a unique world and that while being Spider-Man may not always be a great time, it definitely brings happiness to others. Back in the Raimi universe, Tobey is telling his daughter that he thinks she'll grow up to be someone wonderful, but then a portal opens up behind him. Mary Jane comes in the room as well. The final fight is against the Sinister Six and the 3 Spider-Men. I've decided to skip a lot of scenes as they're mostly dialogue and character development. The fight ends up with Norman attempting to bring back more versions of the Sinister Six over, but you don't get to see them, but all 3 Spider-Men gang up on him. 2 other Spider-Men attempt to hold back the Sinister Six, while Tom attempts to use the orb to bring everybody back to their respective timelines, but Norman's tinkering has damaged it, overloaded it with energy, and using it risks destroying it. If the orb is destroyed, Strange will have nothing to use to at least try to fix the multiverse. Portals start appearing in the sky, buildings, cars, even people start falling from them. Tom successfully sends all of the villains and the other 2 Spider-Men back to their respective timelines. Norman is put back in the last second before he is impaled by his glider. Luckily, the orb didn't break, but it is heavily cracked. Tom thinks about using the orb to bring MJ back to life and get his secret identity back. Strange warns him not to do that, but Tom doesn't listen and does it anyway. The orb then breaks, and then Tom looks around as something happens similar to when Thanos snapped his fingers. Strange asks what he has done, and the screen fades to white. We cut to Tom waking up in his bed. He greets Aunt May good morning and heads to school. At school, he meets Ned. They see MJ passed in the hallway, but she doesn't recognize them. She also seems to be more popular than she was before. Tom recognizes her and becomes sad seeing her, but Ned doesn't. He just says that she's way out of their league. We then see a somber montage of depressed Tom going about his day in high school. There's also a class about alternate dimensions. Tom walks out of the classroom after class and bumps into a blonde girl. They say sorry to each other and make eye contact, but we don't get to see the girl's face. Cut to black, we hear Tom ask who this girl's name is. Movie ends. The post-credit scene is Strange gathering the remains of the broken orb and attempts to fix it, but is unsuccessful. He then senses something, hearing the faint sounds of children. Camera pans past his shoulder, revealing Wanda standing behind him with glowing red eyes. Now, in its entirety, I thought that this started rather poorly at the beginning and sounded like it was just rehashing every leak that we've covered here at the channel, making sure not to skip any of the details. And the fact that they kept including all the details from every leak made me thought that this was just fan fiction in its entirety. But as we got a little further on, even though this was very poorly written, you guys know me, I won't just poo-poo on a plot leak because it's poorly written. Not everybody's a professional writer, but as this plot leak went on, I sort of lost my cynicism a little bit and suspended disbelief. I liked elements of it. I don't understand how the post-credit scene would line up with WandaVision. There may have been a huge time jump between where we saw Wanda at the end of her series and then over in the cabin, enough time for this to happen. Guys, let me know all your thoughts down below in your entirety, your feedback to the plot leak, not really how it was written, but the elements it brought up. And do you think, like me, it was trying too hard in the beginning to include every leak we had ever heard of? Real quickly, we're still doing a million giveaways. I'm not going to drag the ending out here because this video has already been long enough, but as long as you hit the subscribe button, the more videos you comment on, the better chance you are to win the giveaways. Check me out on Spotify and under the name AllFires. Find me on Instagram under I Am Fires. Thanks for checking out the channel, guys. We'll be posting again real soon.